Here is how the bracket sets up after being released last night. Remember, 1, 2, 3, and 4, the highest ranked, what they project to be conference championship teams. You have up in the top left-hand corner, Notre Dame and Tennessee, right corner, Alabama, Indiana, Ole Miss and Penn State, bottom right, and then Ohio State, Boise State with the 4 projected conference championship teams, Oregon, Texas, BYU, and also Miami. In your opinion, Paul Catalina, you give me 1 or 2 of your thoughts on who's too high, who's too low, who shouldn't be in it. And Craig, you also, of course, with your opinion on this.
I think Penn State's a little bit too high in my opinion, but I can go on with that forever. I don't think any of these teams at this point shouldn't be in it based on their record. I think that, I was a little surprised. I'm a little surprised to see SMU maybe not sneak in a little bit, but given the fact that Ole Miss is now very much back in this thing, that Alabama's very much back in this thing, SMU's got a mountain to climb. It's kind of, it's got to be a relief to Miami that you can fall to 9th in the overall rankings, but you're still the 4th highest rated conference champion and you can get in this thing. And we'll see if that going to be the same case for SMU. That might be Boise State. Like, looking at that might be Boise State's window, because clearly they don't think much of SMU yet, even though SMU, only loss is to the 3 seed right now.
Yeah, the number 6th overall ranked team based on the standings, but what would be the automatic qualifier for the Big 12?
The first thing that jumps out to me is actually, I think the place to start when talking about these is not just going chronologically, but like, hey, Oregon's number 1. You've got Texas there at 2, BYU at 3, and Miami at 4. I mean, those are the top 4 seeds. Those are the most important seeds because they're the ones that will automatically be in the second round and are getting that conference championship top 4, love. So to be positioned there, I think, is where you begin with this, and then you fill out the rest of the bracket, and then you look at who's not in this bracket. But this tells the entire tale there. I think Oregon's pretty obvious at number 1 right now. Texas sits in a nice spot. And I guess my second big thought on this is, or I guess my first big thought really is, this is why it was stupid to panic last week. That's why I talked about this last week. The first set of rankings, everybody tells you, don't freak out over the first set of rankings. I understand, though, if you're a team that's never been involved in these, and I also understand that when it's the first time it's ever been 12, maybe because it's brand new, you're not quite sure how to react to it, but I thought last week was a bit of an overreaction when it came to BYU. People flipping out, what if they lose a game? And, well, then don't lose a game. Pretty simple, right? How do you guard against something bad happening? Don't allow it to happen. I know easier said than done, but there was a lot of haruffing about where they sat last week. And, they went and won a very close game against a team that's not even making the postseason, and they did it on the road, and they've jumped up immensely in just 1 week's time. So all along, my message when it comes to the playoff is, especially if you're unbeaten, just keep winning games and it will fall into place. They're not going to not allow an unbeaten to get in there. Now, if you lose, then yeah, you set yourself up to possibly get disrespected. But I think that first ranking, just a lot of overreaction, especially when it came to the Cougars. But I am glad, because I do think there was a layer of disrespect there, because their schedule hasn't changed all that much. All they did was go beat Utah in dramatic fashion, which isn't like some big top 25 win. It is a nice road win, though. But I do think that maybe the committee kind of reversed course a little bit, maybe in how they viewed Utah. Maybe they saw the error of their ways in that first ranking, or maybe they're just like, okay, now you've beaten Utah, we'll give you credit for that. But either way, they definitely got
teams that lost in front of them.
Huh?
What about the fact that Georgia lost?
Well, that's a big part of it. Yeah, I was going to get to that, but maybe the committee is changing though its tune because of some of the outcry on BYU. But yeah, it mostly has to do with what happens in front of you. So just keep winning, let the chaos fall the way that it may, and you'll be just fine. So BYU is in a good spot a week after they were, the big outlier and the big, oh my God, they're getting no respect. So that's all dead and gone in 7 days' time. And the other thing is, I think people forget that SMU's in the ACC. I really do. I don't think people even remember that they're in the ACC, because they are the team that's basically now taken the mantle of being the most disrespected in this thing. And I say that because I have to remind myself sometimes as well. I'm like, oh, there's SMU, they're competing for the G5. Oh, wait, no. They're competing for the ACC championship. So I think maybe you kind of have to remember that. But, yeah, they're certainly a team that's getting the disrespect card right now, so that's something to monitor. But, again, if they keep winning, I think they'll be fine.
All right, so there's the bracket. I'm going to jump, Garrett. There's not a graphic at the bottom of the first set of our stories today. There is no Georgia. Now, remember when they had 4 and the thought was to go to 12? Well, that's too many teams. You're going to have a year like if Alabama and Georgia or someone like that misses the 12, they'll go 16 quickly. But it's refreshing to me. Now, maybe they'll get back in it before it's all said and done, but it's kind of refreshing. You don't have to have them. If they earn it, that's great, but you don't have to have teams like that just because of who they've been. And even though they have the best win for their schedule, of course, was the win at Texas down in Austin. Now, here are the 3 Big 12 teams and where they are. BYU, as Craig just mentioned, securely where they are if they keep winning. And then also Kansas State, Colorado on the outside looking in, but inside that top 20 in the college football rankings. You guys want to hear a few of the responses. This is from people in the media or others, former players. Just going to read a couple of these. You guys stop me when you want to. College Football Selection Committee has Texas, Penn State, and Indiana ranked ahead in no particular order of Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Georgia. Remarkably dumb.
Why is it dumb?
I
mean,
Penn State's lost to Ohio State by 7 or whatever it was. Indiana is undefeated. They have Ohio State around the corner. And then Texas, of course, has won at Michigan, even though that's not a top 25 win. It was still, they won at Michigan, and they've taken care of their business. They did lose the game at home to Georgia.
Look, I've made my peace with the Penn State thing, knowing that this is a team that's going to fall ass backwards into the playoffs, having not a really great schedule. They have a fantastic defense. They have an okay offense, but historically, under James Franklin, they have not beaten teams that are as good or better than them. And that's going to be – there's going to be a fall ass backwards into the playoff team every year in 12. That's how it's going to be for the most part. And it will take care of itself in one way or the other. They'll either win games or they won't.
I feel like whoever wrote that, you and I should go on a campaign and just abolish the regular season, and let's just fast forward to the postseason, and let's take the 8 SEC teams that you think are all better than anybody else because you haven't probably watched most of those other teams, and let's go ahead and have this SEC playoff. Like maybe we'll allow the Big Ten to get a team or two, but let's just eradicate everybody else. Anonymous quote you just read. I mean, what's the point of playing the effing games, man?
I agree.
I mean, this is where the eye test comes in and, all that. But, here's the deal, guys. People act like this committee is, drastically they're doing the same thing they've done the entire time.
Since 14.
And also, again, kind of like last week, we're like, oh, my God, BYU's just – they're going to miss the playoff. It's week 2 of the rankings. Can we let some more games happen? There's 3 weeks left. There's going to be more chaos. So, the whole – even what you're saying about, you leave Georgia out. It's fine. We'll see at the end of the day if they do or not, but I also don't feel like we always need to get caught up in the SEC, and yet here we are, and it's about the SEC. They either have too much or not enough or whatever. But in this case, I appreciate all the opinions, but remarkably dumb. You're going to have to explain that because I think it's remarkably dumb to just put teams ahead of teams who have earned it because of where they play. I don't know. I don't understand that comment at all.
All right, there's also, you get the response about when teams are ranked inside the college football standings, you don't think Alabama wouldn't beat BYU if they played? Or you mean to tell me you don't think so-and-so would beat Boise State? And then I saw this reaction to that question. Do you think Vanderbilt would beat Alabama? Do you think that NIU would beat Notre Dame, that Kentucky would beat Ole Miss, that Georgia Tech would beat Miami? That's why you play the games. Otherwise, why play the damn games?
I'll just tell you, hey, world that thinks that everything was how it used to be, it's not, and it's probably never going to be that way again. There will be teams that will be consistently good over and over again, but I don't know if we're going to see long runs of super teams of, oh, dear God, how do we beat them? Because there's free agency now. there is free agency. There will now always be free agency. That is how it's going to work. So, yes, there are some teams that are going to have inherent built-in advantages because they have more money, they're better run, just like professional sports.
Yep.
You know, occasionally you're going to get the Royals who can win a World Series in spite of all the things in front of them money-wise because they did a really good job at building a team. But you're going to get a lot of time the Yankees don't win the World Series because they spend too much of their resources on, not developing their own and going and getting free agents. It's going to be the same way in college football. It's the same way in pro sports. So things are changing. So when you say, oh, my God, Vanderbilt can beat Alabama, damn right they can. And damn right all these other teams can because the Alabamas and Georgias of the world aren't as deep as they used to be.
Yeah, this all goes back to the same thing kind of for me. It's expanded playoff. It's been amazing to me, astonishing really, to see the number of college football fans that want to see less college football and want to see less great stories have an opportunity to be an even bigger story. So,
well,
that's just really weird to me as somebody who is actually just a fan of the sport, and I'm not wearing my team label every day. Indiana's okay. Look, if you want to pick apart Indiana's schedule, I feel the same way. I think that they are a paper tiger in some ways, but you know what? They're going to play Ohio State soon, so we're going to see what's what in that regard, right? And they would have to, even if they won that, go play a Big Ten championship game. So they're not going to go untested. And yes, some teams have played more ranked games than others. When you have a circle jerk in the top 25, you're going to have more opportunities to play top 25 games. But then you're also trying to say, but our losses don't count as much. And so that's just...
I saw that last night.
Yeah, it's amazing to me, how much people just want to just fast forward to this version that is just this hand-selected, same teams every year, and let's throw out the accomplishments when you're not under a certain banner because our eye test, my personal bias, says that you couldn't hang in Ole Miss. I think that's so incredibly stupid. And the fact that that's a college football media member is not surprising because that's a growing number of the voices, but I just think that's disappointing and is not really great for the sport. Not the sport that's defined by one place or one team or one whatever, but the sport that goes across the country. I think this has made it way more exciting, and the fact that you want less of this or less people getting opportunities who never get those opportunities, it's bizarre to me.
Put up the graphic again of the bracket, please, Garrett, if you don't mind. We all got hot opinions on this. There's 12 teams. You know what the Big Ten and the SEC are apparently fighting for is what?
And I was going to bring this up. They want guaranteed spots. 3
or maybe even 4. Right now, they both have 4.
Yeah. Okay.
And then people want to complain, why
Not
isn't
enough.
Georgia in it? It's still, yeah, exactly.
Okay. To that point, because of everything that Craig and you and I just said about how, teams can win now, it's different, it's been better, all this, you have all this intrigue. Why do you think that the Big Ten and SEC want to guarantee those spots? Because they know it's different too.
No, yeah.
They know. Greg Sankey is well aware that he could have 1 year where, he might get 5 teams because those are the best 5 teams. But he also knows that the things are changing enough that, oh my God, maybe there's a year they only have 2.
Yeah.
Because
for God's sakes, you're kidding.
Because guess what?
Yeah.
Last year, when it was 4, he had to pull some magic to make sure that they got at least 1.
I also saw this, and again, we're just these are some comments from people off media. I didn't put all the names. I didn't put all the tweets up because we don't have time to put them all up. We have enough of those. But I have seen this a lot. How could Georgia be outside the top 12 when they have beaten the hell out of Clemson at a neutral site and won at Texas? Hey, those wins might be why they're 13 or whatever, and they, in the end, could end up getting them back inside of this bracket and inside this playoff. Those wins absolutely matter, but we can't just forget about the losses because you have big wins. There's also the point of, well, who have you beaten? And that's a valid point, too. Who have you beaten? How many teams have wins against teams in the top 25 or inside the college football standings? That's also a valid, at least, discussion, too.
Well, it sounds like the target moves when you want to start talking about losses. Oh, wait, but what about who you've beaten?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we've actually beaten some teams. Yeah, but how many teams in your league are ranked in the top 20? You're going to just have a moving target because these people aren't listening to reality.
No, and look, if you want to get into who you're beating, then Texas has a problem.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Texas has a problem. Now, that could change here in a couple weeks, but,
If anyone is in where they are, and this is not to disrespect them because I think they're freaking like jet fuel, who among the, let's say, top 5 or 6 teams is an eye test pick?
Well, I think Texas is, and I think I don't think that's unfair. Like, you watch Texas
I never
play,
said
they're
it was
badass.
unfair.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying my opinion. I don't think it's unfair. Texas is right now an eye test pick, and it's not their fault because
Michigan sucks this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not their fault, but I'm just saying that.
But you can't do that with them, which is fair. And then also when it's a team that's not allowed to be a part of this, has something similar, and then question their schedule is what my other part of that is. Now, SMU Miami. They have Miami right now as the ACC champion, which would mean one of the top 4 seeds.
This is also dumb, honestly. Like the amount of conversation, like they are just getting their money's worth because we sit here and go crazy over it, and then next week it changes.
Well,
and
somebody loses,
I mean, it's just that's what's so silly. That's what was especially silly about last week and why I was not flipping out over the very first rankings because like I've learned enough, and now I find myself slipping into that trap here. But it's not even so much slipping into it is when I see somebody try to disregard other people's successes because SEC, that pisses me off when it comes from a media member who's I'll say it again, college football fan. I use the air quotes because I don't really believe they're a fan of the sport at large.
A lot of people in our business now have become
homers,
have blogs and stuff like that are very much they're biased. And it's a little bit almost of a cheerleading factor in too many ways, and that's everywhere.
That's the whole media, yeah.
SMU and Miami. Overall record, Miami's 9-1, SMU is 8-1. Conference record 5-0 for SMU, Miami's 5-1. Records against the top 25, Miami's 1-0, SMU's 1-1. Conference record against FBS teams above 500, SMU's 4-1, Miami's 3-1. Combined opponent win percentage, SMU's higher than Miami. Road record, SMU 4-0, Miami 4-1. And college football ranking, SMU is 14 and Miami is 9. Ward Manuel, the narrative last week was the eye test. And this one was a response or question about the teams like Indiana and et cetera involved. He went yesterday or last night to talking about how we just like this team. Or Miami's edge against SMU. He should have just said this. He didn't. He alluded to it. We just kind of like the way their quarterback plays.
It's Cam Ward. Look, Miami, and I don't know if that's most of the time I would say that's kind of a BS argument, but Miami is only in this position by the grace of Cam Ward because that defense has put them behind the 8 ball 5 different times this year, and if not for, what happened at Cal, which was wild. What happened at Virginia Tech, which was wild. What happened at Louisville, which was wild. Like a couple other times, they wouldn't even be close to this spot if Cam Ward wasn't Superman.
Yeah, and SMU's had some close games too. But one of the other things that they would not bring that up is that SMU has had too many close games. It's how they want to position it. And we're just having a little bit of a discussion and also giving you a little bit of education on this too. So, Taylor McCart will join us in about 20 minutes. Here's what he put last night. I'm totally fine with this, but would flip Miami and Notre Dame. Also, SMU has every reason to complain, but will all sort itself out, like Craig has said many times, if they keep winning. Same thing with anyone else.
I actually want Miami and Notre Dame to play in the playoff, but because I want a little Catholics versus convicts action back in my life.
Go get those old T-shirts out of the Now,
I agree. I think you just keep winning and it'll sort itself out. I didn't have much of a problem with the rankings. There are things that I do agree with people on. I don't think it's all like I'm not closed off to certain arguments. Like, yeah, I do think Indiana is a bit of a lightweight when it comes to who they've actually beaten. But like I said, they're going to play Ohio State soon enough, potentially a Big Ten championship game. They're going to be tested before it's all said and done. And I could see you maybe tweaking a team by a spot here and there if you wanted to drop Miami lower. But I do think SMU's getting totally disrespected. Like, if anybody wants to play the disrespect card, it's SMU.
Yeah.
Your only loss is to an undefeated 9-0 BYU team who is right now a top 3 seed in the entire playoff. And you lost to them by a field goal in a game where I guarantee if you replay that, BYU still maybe wins that game. Still a good chance they do. I don't think they're holding SMU to like 5 field goals again, the way that they did in that first meeting. I think that BYU can still very well win 4 out of 5 against them or whatever. But that you look back at that game, they limited SMU to 5 field goals. That was still when the quarterback situation was kind of like being worked through. And I think now you get like a better Kevin Jennings, and teams get better along the way. BYU's a different team since then as well, but that loss was a close loss and a bad day for them, but that's their only blemish. Other than that, they played them tightly despite not being able to get in the end zone. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit. Maybe, again, it's what I think, and they still feel like SMU is just some G5 team.
Yeah, and again, just keep winning, and they will have a chance to play Miami. Right?
Go in the ACC.
If they would have went out and Miami wins out, they're going to play them in the championship game. Here are the first round point spreads from Brett McMurphy. Put this up, courtesy of someone that works for Action Network HQ. Ohio State would be a near 3-touchdown favorite against Boise State. Penn State a pick 'em against Ole Miss. Alabama 5-point pick against Indiana, and Tennessee would be a 2-point pick against Notre Dame. Now, let's remember those games would be at Ohio State. They would be at Penn State. They would be at Indiana. And then the other game would be in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Well, here's really where my focus is, more so than who's getting disrespected or how many teams can we cram in, even though they've got 3 losses. I mean, the committee PR chairwoman basically throwing that narrative out there yesterday on the biggest show in America. So if you want to talk about like people wearing tinfoil hats or trying to make some of this up, it's like, just go watch Pat McAfee yesterday and you can see for yourself the actual spokesperson for this committee putting forth the idea of 3-loss teams from a certain conference. So like there's not entirely just all paranoia that's made up out of nowhere. But I think in general where the playoff lies, while you can get in the mud and sling it back and forth on all these little intricacies that we're talking about, my thing again is, just let it play itself out, because it's already, worked out for BYU in 1 week's time, even though not much. Yes, things changed. Teams lost, they won again, but again, it worked itself out in 7 days. So the rest of these problems, quote unquote problems, I think will work themselves out. But where my head really is just looking at these games. It gets me excited. It gets me excited to think that Notre Dame is going to roll into Knoxville to play at night, during the day. I don't know when it would be. I don't know what bowl game that would be off the top of my head, but that seems like a hell of a freaking game to watch. And if it was just the Orange Bowl or something, that'd probably be pretty cool. But the fact that it's not, and it's a Tennessee home game, that's an elimination, that the winner then goes to play Oregon, is just freaking awesome. I mean, we've dreamed of this our entire lives, and here we are, and we get these super matchups. Alabama, Indiana, that's not something like on my dream card. If I was filling out fantasy booking this, that would be top of mind. I wouldn't have Indiana in this grouping necessarily, but they're a fun team to watch, and being in Bloomington, welcoming Alabama, you don't think that's a big-ass deal for that program?
Oh,
man,
my
that'd be
God.
huge.
Well, they had game day.
Huge game.
Those things are, that's how you also then get better players and recruits, too.
That's interesting.
And maybe you win.
Penn State hosting Ole Miss would be electric, and then Ohio State, Boise State. I can already hear the people out there who are claiming that Boise State doesn't deserve to be in the playoff, because look at that point spread. Look at that point spread. Vegas says they'd be 2 touchdown underdogs. Why even play the game, Jethro?
Yep.
I mean, I hate that, because that's
you
that's
said
just,
Jethro, stop making fun of the SEC.
No, I'm just saying that in general.
That's also
not the Pac-12.
Sorry, Bartholomew Big Ten.
That's also easily the Big 12. There's some Jethros.
Oh no,
there,
absolutely.
Too.
No,
I get it.
that's college football fans. So I think that is definitely an argument that's been out there somewhere. It's like, well, look at that point spread. Why? That's why Georgia should be in there, because they would maybe even be favorites. And I know that's probably what's being said, but give Boise a damn shot. They earned it. And if they go into Columbus, they're probably not winning that game. But you know what? All they're asking for is the opportunity. That's all they're asking for. And so I think that would be pretty cool to see as well. So, yeah, I'm stoked about the possibilities. I know this isn't how it's going to finish, but just looking at the layout on paper and knowing what we got coming our way in December, I think that looks pretty badass.
All right, I mentioned the one about the playoffs. We don't need to go to 12 teams. That's too many because 4 is just fine until all of a sudden somebody that's used to being a part of that 4, not saying they haven't earned it, but all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we may not even make the 12. We need to get this thing to 16. Let's get to some football notes. We have been, but some football news. Cam Skattebo, Arizona State running back, is according to our good friend Chris Karpman, will play against Kansas State unless something changes, according to Sun Devils head coach Kenny Dillingham. They won without him last week, was very impressive about it, but he's back, and they surely wouldn't say, no, you need to stay out another week or two. We're fine.
Yeah, I'm in the Cam Skattebo fan club for sure. Really excited to see. This is a game full of great running backs. There's a great run game.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's look, Kansas State. It better mind its P's and Q's now because they're starting to play fast and loose a little bit with their future. I think that Kansas State is showing they're probably about a year away. That the seedlings are there for them to be good for a couple years, but right now it's just not quite there. Arizona State has cut the line.
Yeah.
Now you're looking at a team that could find their way into a way better spot than anybody ever thought they could be, especially with a win against Kansas State.
I think Kansas State, maybe even Colorado. Let's see, there's somebody else that should be a part of this where everyone thought, oh, this is pretty neat, this is cute, but eventually the schedule overwhelmed them, and look where they are with 3 games left in the season.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously huge news. He's their best player. It's not even close. And they were not able to run the ball very well against UCF. Didn't necessarily have to. They were explosive enough. Sam Levitt passed the ball around well, and obviously the connection with Jordan Tyson has gotten pretty strong. So they didn't need him to win last week against UCF, but I don't see any scenario where they could go win in Manhattan, Kansas without Cam Skattebo. So that's a big deal, and that ought to be a nasty physical game. And K-State, they've dropped a couple. They were on the road. They also got fortunate not to drop that Tulane game. They got fortunate to not drop that Colorado game. There's a scenario where they're only a one-loss team or maybe a no-loss team. Or no, they definitely didn't. They're a one-loss team because that BYU game was just such an ass-kicking. But that Houston game came down to the wire. So, yeah, they've been kind of riding that line and have been able to manage to stay upright. But they've been fortunate not to drop a couple of others either. This one will be a test, especially with Skattebo back in the fold. And I think it's a unique matchup between the old school Big 12 and one of the newcomers here.
It is, excuse me, Craig. It has been a miserable year for Utah football. And, of course, last weekend, maybe the icing on the cake. And then, of course, the story with Mark Harlan, too. And now this story. Josh Furlong will join us today at 5:25. Their backup quarterback suffered an injury on the last series. Rose suffered an injury, found out last night it would keep him out for the rest of the season. Isaac Wilson, who got some snaps when Cam Rising was in and out, will be quarterback 1, and Batari will be quarterback 2. That's it. Josh will join us on that, plus the Mark Harlan drama and more in about 2 hours. So Utah continues to have just constant injuries. Now, and by the way, that was in the last series of the game. The last series of the game is when Rose went out. Brandon Rose went out with that injury. Here's a couple of coaching notes. I saw this one right about the time I was packing up my laptop. I don't know how much steam is here. How about this? Joe Castiglione was asked about whether or not Coach Venables will be back in 2025. Now, this is after he was asked a question about the football program. He said, we're going to do everything we can to try to make things better. Then he was followed up. Can you say right now he will be back next year? As I just said, we're focusing on all the areas of improvement that are necessary now and for next year. How would you see that, Paul, if you're an OU fan or just who we are to cover college football?
Okay, ask Scott Strickland the same thing last week about Billy Napier. What'd he say?
Yep.
He said yes.
Yep.
He said he's coming back. That was not a yes. It wasn't a no either. And so right now that's nebulous. I would tend to lean that they want to bring him back or that's where they are. But sometimes, I get the feeling that they might need to that he might be out the door.
I mean, that's pointing to him being around more than it is to him being gone, the way that I read the quote. And as an Oklahoma fan, I mean, I don't know what else they're supposed to say, guys. What else are they supposed to say?
Why doesn't he just say, yeah, he's back next year?
Because I think there's some uncertainty that he's not back.
That's why I put it up for us to discuss it.
I think there's obviously some uncertainty when you're used to a certain standard and it's not quite getting there, and you still got 3 weeks to play. The season's not over with, so it's kind of a dumb thing to flip, your cards and say, oh yeah, Brent, by the way, I told the newspaper that you are dangling on the edge. Sorry I didn't tell you. I think it's pretty obvious that he's on a hot seat, and there's not really much you can say right now. I know that there was the vote of confidence for Billy Napier last week. I also know that was incredibly stupid. Because what happened?
Yep, they
turned around and got their ass kicked by Texas. So that was just the dumbest thing in the world. So why would Joe Castiglione walk back into that landmine and then have Oklahoma turn around and take another loss, especially after what happened to them last weekend? So, yeah, I don't think it's 100% that he's back. I'd lean more that he is than he's not. But I don't think it's surprising in any way that, nobody's ready to go 100% full-blown concrete commitment on Brent Venables' future right now.
Also, speaking of future, we have told you a couple of times in the last week or two about some of the murmurs involving Brent Brennan in Arizona. This is from Jason Scheer. A lot of rumors regarding his status. Friday's game could be big for various reasons. If those rumors are true, he also added yet another one that I'll read to you. I have no idea if Arizona, this is Jason Scheer, will be able to raise the necessary money. There have been strong rumors that the school has it through boosters. Still, people continue to have difficulty separating school financial issues and money that comes from fundraising and also boosters. This has been picking up steam.
Yeah, I think there's the theory here with Arizona and Brent Brennan that wasn't the right guy to replace Jed Fish, and they're going to go ahead and try and cut bait before, they get too long into it and try to reboot it. Although, I don't know, you're looking back on it, what everybody thought was going to happen after they lose what they lost, and then it was all about Fafita and McMillan. McMillan's going to the draft, no doubt, this year, and then the whole thing is going to be trying to keep Noah Fafita out of the transfer portal. So if Brent Brennan can't do that and Fafita wants to leave, then nobody can stop him.
I just don't know how everybody so badly missed on Brent Brennan's hire at the time then. Because it seemed fine when you hired him to go replace Jed Fish, and Jed Fish was a big old POS, and, we got the best players to stick around anyways. We don't need you. There's not going to be much of a drop-off. The coaching wasn't really a factor. All these things that I read and heard during the offseason about Arizona, that losing their coaching staff was not going to be that big of a deal. It obviously has turned into a big deal. But to be in a situation where you're approaching 10 games into a guy's tenure and already at this point of trying to back out of it, I just think that's a pretty egregious error to make by your hiring committee. No? That's just – I don't know how you missed that badly, potentially. So that's where I would start as far as culpability goes, not Brent Brennan. Because why? Are we going to trust those same people to hire the next guy?
Well, that's the thing about Strickland. When people look at what Napier's done or not done, the other thing is we could give them another chance to hire somebody else when they also have a basketball coach under investigation who we hired. And again, that remains to be seen. I agree.
But I also understand that, Fafita is going to be probably like in Eugene, Oregon or something next year. I imagine he's going to get a lot of great portal offers. Oregon might have better in mind. I don't know the whole crop that will be out there just yet, but he could definitely be in that pool. McMillan will be in the draft, like you said. And beyond that, I don't really know what you're selling. I don't know where Jacob Manu and all these other names that are great players for them start to stack up in terms of the departures off the top of my head. But, yeah, you're not going to be more talented next year in any way.
Nope.
So, yeah, I don't know. It's a bad situation, so I can understand why it's kind of at a fever pitch right now. But I also know, you're not – even Ohio State doesn't fire a guy 10 games into his first season.
Yeah.
So I don't know that you've really got a much of a leg to stand on unless you just go all right, you guys aren't hiring the next guy because this was such a disaster that we can't do this over
And if you don't allow the AD who hired the coach, if that's the one who did it, to hire the next one, then you need to fire him too, or her.